MSP 501 list came out. We applied. We didn't hear from them. I don't think I'm on it. Our good friend Harold Mann over at Mann Consulting made it, though. That's good.
Well, that's nice.
I don't know what the criteria is to be on that list. Like, I filled in the form. It was a complicated form, a lot of numbers. Put it in there. Not sure what determines whether or not I'm cool enough to be on the list or not. I don't like that. Like, there's no you got in or you got rejected email. I literally, for this past week, had to they release 50 a day, and I've had to click through to see if I've made the list, which is kind of annoying. But now I know there's other people out there.
But they generated clicks, and therefore they can sell that to advertisers.
It was just, yeah. It was like a slideshow thing. And what was funny was I was doing it on my computer, and I was like, all right, 501 to 451, whatever. And then this morning, I was like, oh, the list came out this morning. Let me grab my phone. And on my phone, as I was clipping through the slideshow, there were every 5 or 6 clicks, there was please wait for advertiser. And I was like, oh, I noticed that I don't have ad block on my phone the way I do on my computer.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you made the 501, let us know. And congratulations to all the winners. I'm going to hang out with the loser crowd. Wah, wah, wah. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the All Things MSP podcast. I'm your host, Justin Esker, and with me always is podcast producer extraordinaire and Obi-Wan Beard Nobi, Eric Anthony.
It is getting a little wild, I have to say.
I feel like the beer jokes have taken over for our Liquid Death failed sponsorship. So at least we have something that's consistent.
Although I was gonna grab one today.
What's funny is ChatGPT now wants me to start pulling female celebrity inspired, or we can go full Simpson meets Comic-Con meets GQ worst nightmare. Yeah, show me some Simpsons, baby. Dude, it's been a week. I gotta say, it's funny to me how, you have these weeks, especially when we're recording, which is the week before July 4th. And so next week's already going to be a short week, not to mention most people are going to take, July 4th is on a Friday, I think, right? So, yeah, most people are going to take off Thursday, and they're going to leave early on Wednesday. So, knock on wood, next week is easy. But this week, I gotta say, we got bombarded with just, I don't want to say stupidity, because everybody believes that all clients are stupid, even though they're not. I want to say we got bombarded with just a plethora of dumb things, right? It was just it was one thing after another, and it was unnecessary. And I'm wondering if, especially because it's the summertime, people are we got to ramp up. And then next week, everyone's we're not going to do anything.
It is a weird time of year. And 4th of July, it's always a little bit like this. And I think it's more exaggerated because the last day of the month and quarter are Monday.
Right.
And this applies more to salespeople than anybody else. But, there's this huge ramp to the end of month, end of quarter, and then everybody just kind of disappears until after the 4th of July.
If your sales reps are calling you on Tuesday, July 1st, they are desperate to backlog an item. Just saying. By the way, I've gotten so many LinkedIn requests since appearing at PAX 8. I got one from somebody. This one wasn't even LinkedIn. This was an email being hey, so glad you stopped by our booth. Would love to chat with you more. 1, don't know who you are. 2, I don't let anyone scan my badge at those things. So how did you get my information, and what makes you think I went to your booth, homie?
I will not say that I know anybody who's actually done this. I have just heard that it happens. They will go around, take pictures of people's badges, and then scan them later.
Shut up. Now I'm going to write back to that guy. That's ridiculous. That's not cool. That's not cool at all.
There's, we talked about shows, and so we don't want to belabor the point again, but there's going to need to be a transformation in shows. I think there's been some posts on LinkedIn and Facebook about this as well. But I think this is going to be a year where shows either need to change or you're going to see dramatic dips in attendance.
Yeah. I'm not worried about my show, though, because we're not doing it again. Or maybe we are. I don't know. We'll find out later.
He says that every year.
I say that every year. You know what's so funny? We send out the videos from this year, and like we had some AV problems. And I legit at the bottom of my email, and I wrote like, hey, look, I know the audio on this isn't great for all of the sessions. We did our best. We tried to use AI to clean it up. We put the subtitles in. We did the whole thing. We paid extra to like have the editors like do as much as they can. And of course, one person wrote back to me being like, I can't use this. This is horrible. I'm like, I even wrote like don't email me. But the funny thing was that in my email to everybody, I wrote, much like I say on the All Things podcast, we'll try better next time.
If there is.
If there is, you never know. It's like a magic trick. Sometimes we what? Show them if you ask again from your iPhone. What is Lady in the Box? What did I even say that the Lady in the Box?
I don't know. I think I'm going to have to go back and find out what you said.
She found web results of what? Anyway, yeah. It's not the point of today's topic, but I did want to talk about the fact that this person emailed me and it pissed me off. Let's talk about things that piss us off. You know what pisses us off most? Cheap clients. There you go. I did it. I rode the wave.
I saw how you did that.
Rode the wave in.
I think before, like, if we're going to talk about that, we need to talk about different types of cheap clients, though, because I think there's more than one cheap client. There's the cheap client.
There is, because we all have them.
Well, yes. Or we have all had them.
Yeah.
There's nonprofits, there's religious organizations, there's places that are truly trying to do something with nothing.
Yes.
Right. And as MSPs, we are frequently called upon to help those organizations, just like we are small to medium-sized businesses. And we don't want to throw any shade on them because obviously they're trying to do the right thing by their members, the people they serve, whatever. But then there are those that are in business. They're in business to make money. And if they're not willing to invest in tools to do the right job, I think you seriously have to look at them as an MSP and go, is that a client that I want?
Did this come up in the group? Was this post in the All Things group, by the way?
Yes.
You're reading them? Okay, that you're reading about, yeah. Oh yeah, here it is, right? What's the cheapest way to get multiple business email addresses? Is that the one we're talking about?
Yes, that is exactly the one I'm referencing.
Yeah. So if you don't know what we're talking about, first, number one, go to the group, facebook.com/groups/All Things MSP, and you could read up on this one. There's a lot to unpack with just that one question, right? What's the cheapest way to get multiple business email addresses? And I think to your point, right? Like for-profit businesses shouldn't be. The thing is, like, so it's funny in my mind to think about that cheap clients are annoying. We're talking about for-profit businesses where they're being cheap, right?
Right.
Where they want, 98 email addresses, but they want them all to be aliases to go to the one person who then has an inbox and a trash and never sorts it, right? Like that level of. But at the same time, I can't help but call the kettle black because I am very cheap with my vendors and I'm always asking for discounts. And so like, I feel like I do want to get into this cheap client thing, but like I've also, and I should have said this pre-show, but like it just came to me now, like the amount of times I've gone to vendors for a product that I want, and I'm like, hey, how do I get it for free?
Okay, I mean, fair. but you're still picking the right tool. You're just asking for it for cheaper.
And I'm also, in all fairness, though, I'm not just asking for it to be cheap or free. I am like bartering for knowledge or feedback or something. So it's not like I'm not being cheap for cheap's sake, which is where I think the clients are, right? They're being cheap for cheap's sakes.
Right. They're trying to cut corners is where I would probably put
Better.
that.
Yeah.
And my issue with this, and this especially tracks for email, is that email is the number one source of compromise right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have good systems around your email, then you are going to be more susceptible to business email compromise. And one of the suggestions was cPanel. And this is the way we used to do it in the day, right? We used to spin up a web server.
cPanel?
We used to have as many email addresses as we wanted in that account, and we were charging them $29.95 a month for web hosting and email, right?
God. If you're listening right now, you need to go to youtube.com/@allthingsmsp and just see how I'm like physically sighing over the fact that someone thinks cPanel in 2025 is like the right way to do anything.
Well, but here's my thing, right? Yes, you could provide email addresses that way today. You could still do it that way.
Yeah.
However, to do it responsibly, you need to now add a spam filter on top of that. You need to add some other type of mail filtering to
you need checkpoint. You need anti-phishing, anti-malware, DLP, the whole nine. Yeah.
And by the time you do that, you're now over the price of a Microsoft 365 E1 license or a Google Workspace starter license,
which has a good amount of that email protection built in. Not all Correct. Of it, but a good amount. Yeah.
And I also want to know if they need email addresses but don't need either Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, like what are they doing?
Insurance. They're an insurance company. I have no idea. By the way, I want to piss you off a little further. I did ask the guy who posted. It's a dental office. I'm just causing PTSD for you. I have no idea if it's a dental office. Yeah, I
heartburn.
Yeah. What's funny is that someone wrote, there's a free Google Maps scraper, or you can build your own LinkedIn scraper, because I think maybe the question they would be interpreted as like, what's the cheapest way to get, as in receive, multiple business addresses, right? Like that's not a bad take on things. But let's take this out, right? If this really is what we think this is, which is that a business is looking for a cheap way to have multiple email addresses. Okay.
Well, and to be clear, 5 employees with email addresses.
Do you know that for a fact? Did you talk?
I do not know, but that's the assumption that I am making.
5 people. It's a business, 5
because
people.
Aliases are totally different.
No. But my point was that where I was going with this was that if they're not willing to spend the $15 a month average for a Microsoft license or a Google license and spend $75 a month on email, okay, where they have it in the cloud, it's protected to a degree, there's security to a degree, there's all these things. If they're not willing to spend that, why would they be willing to spend any money on you and your services? And that's where we're going with this, right? Like, if they're not going to spend the money on the, I understand when a client wants to choose between different VoIP providers. Like I have a client right now, and they happen to be a nonprofit, so that plays a little bit into it. But like they're on a VoIP provider who's going downhill fast, and so we're looking at either Zoom Workspace with Zoom Phone, but they're a Microsoft based their email, so their team wants Teams, and they want potentially Teams Phone, which is more expensive than Zoom. I understand the decision being like, we can do Zoom, the whole thing with phone, or Teams and the whole thing with phone, and Zoom is $10 a month cheaper. The nonprofit's going to do that. That's an understandable decision. But if the nonprofit, which has 30 people, was like, I don't want to pay for email addresses, let's just have one and everybody will share it. Like, not to mention the cost thing. That's obviously, we mentioned, is like a security problem, because now everybody has the login to info@ or whatever. those aren't the type of clients that I think us as professional service providers should be engaging with, because they're going to be a liability for you as a business owner as well, right? Like, you can't risk that kind of stuff. And like, I have clients that do stuff on the cheap here and there, but like, I would never let someone do something like this.
Well, and I want to put it in this perspective too. $75 a month is a half hour of your time.
Mm-hmm.
That means they're not willing to pay a half hour of your time per month for the most critical communications path in their business.
Well, I mean, if they're AI driven focused marketing disruption, they don't.
Oh,
I'm bullshitting.
no.
But you're right. I mean, that's the thing, right? And so what's funny is that like this original poster, and I don't want to call him out, but like you can figure it out who it is, hasn't even responded, because like someone even wrote like, are all those email addresses going to the same inbox? Use aliases. But then someone else was like, Google Workspace Business Starter or Business Basic. Your answer was like, if they can't spend the money, they don't have a real business, which I agree with. I think that's the right answer. I think if they're trying to be, if they're trying to nickel and dime on something as critical as email,
right. Well,
it doesn't make sense.
Let me put it into this lens, right? If it's a 5-person business, okay, probably at minimum, they should be doing $500,000 a year, right? About $100,000 an employee to be a, let's call it just semi-healthy business.
Sure.
And they can't spend $75 a month on their most critical path of communications. There's something that doesn't compute there. Because that's less than $1,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. I was actually just doing the math in my head as well. Yeah, it is. It's close. It's not really.
It's 900.
It's less than $1,000 a year. You can clearly see I don't know how to do math.
I don't do math well in my head either, but I did the 10 times 75 is 750, and then add 2 more months on. And I
did 100 times 12 to get to 1,200, and then I was like, maybe I can work this backwards. Whatever. Yes, it's less than $1,000 a year. That's the point here. And to be honest, I think this also leads into another conversation we've kind of talked about before, which is, we did this when we talked to when we talked to Jackson the other week. Sorry, I blanked on his name for a second. There are clients out there who cannot be helped. And if these people aren't willing to spend the money to have legit email addresses, look, I'm a 12-person business, right? Okay. We're a 12-person business. We have, I want to say, 15 email addresses that are active. There's one for every one of us. And then we have a couple of generic, support ad or whatever. But like, we're very conscious about adding more role-based emails, right? So like, I don't need a hello at and info at and a contact me at. I can use aliases for that. But when it comes to employees or users that need to get to data that is important, that's when you need to spend the money on it. I do the same. Like, I understand being cost conscious, right? But I don't understand being a cheap ass.
Well, and glad you brought that up, because now you're talking kind of about the people who share a mailbox, right? They give 2 people or 3 people or 4 people the same login to Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. And that is no longer acceptable in the world that we live in, because you cannot, no.
Agree to disagree.
It does not fit any cybersecurity framework to allow multiple people to use the same login to an email address or
what
file
about
server.
Hold on. I agree to until I have I'm 99.98% the way there. Here's my 0.2%. Um, for MSPs especially who have support at, and yes, it goes into a ticketing system, right? And everyone has access to the ticketing system, fine. But people need to know the login to support at, because what if it doesn't go into the ticketing system? If only one person knows it and that person's out and tickets aren't coming in, someone else needs to know, right? So like that's what I'm saying. Like there is a use case for people having, there is no longer a use case for people to continuously all the time be logged in. But again, I can understand a nonprofit who may have info at or hello at being used that way. The alternative obviously is to use groups to get around that. But I am 99.98% with you on the no shared mailbox. I will also say, though, if you do need a shared mailbox, use a password manager and have two-factor authentication codes built into it.
Yes.
Can we balance? Are we balanced there? Are we okay? Okay, fine. You're giving me looks like no one can see this because most people are listening and not going to youtube.com/at All Things MSP. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. But like you're giving me like the nastiest of looks when I'm talking about the use case that it exists. Like,
look, there's multiple ways to solve that problem, right? A lot of times you don't need a shared mailbox. A lot of times you just need forwarding to accomplish the same kind of thing. So
sure.
It really depends on the use case. And what you're really trying to do is you're trying to make sure you're using the right use case in order to keep yourself as secure as possible.
Well, let's phrase it the other way around, which is that the MSP, you guys who are listening, are providing the highest level of security for your customer, and having these conversations with them. Like the conversation Eric and I are having about don't share mailboxes is something you should be talking to them about. And while I like to just throw wrenches at Eric to piss him off on a regular basis, like in reality, he's correct about this, right? Like, again, I understand maybe a nonprofit having, their internal team, two people having access to info ad or hello ad or something. But the reality is that it should be a distribution list or a group with the ability to respond from it, as opposed to two people logging in. But I can understand the use case.
Yeah.
Right? But in a business setting, like there's delegation on, like both Google and Microsoft have delegation. If that's really, I have a client who the owner's assistant logs into the owner's email all the time. And I'm like, I understand why, right? But I don't agree with the reasoning.
Right. Because you could use delegation for that.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially because they're on Microsoft. It's like super, super easy.
Right.
But the other side of that is always like, well, this is what we've been doing for years. How do we get off of it? And that's on me, 100%. No, look, guys, I don't know if you realize this. No one said I was the world's greatest MSP. Like that's on me.
Especially you.
I've continuously bashed myself. I know people do it on the internet. I'll do it for you. But yeah, like those are those use cases where you need to teach them how to use the right stuff. But again, yeah, like to this original post, if legitimately, what is the cheapest way to get multiple business email addresses? Let them Gator host. Let them run up a $2.99 web hosting. Is GeoCities still around? Like, I don't know. AOL's still a thing. I know that because my mom has it. Like there are ways to do it on the cheap, but those are not the people that I think you as and you know what's funny is even like I have friends who only do like home users or micro businesses, like a 1-2 person business. Even them, I would say this client is going to be a problem. Get away from them.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the problem and some of the scary stuff and the risks and stuff like that. But as an MSP, I think you can systematically help yourself by creating some processes around your initial engagement with a new prospect to help determine whether or not you're going to have these kinds of issues with this client, right? Mm. You can ask the right discovery questions. You can find out what's important to them. And a lot of times I think you can actually change the conversation by saying, okay, this is what's important to you. This is what it's going to cost. And this is why, because it's going to do this and save you this time, this money, or it's going to reduce these risks so that you're not putting everybody that works for you and their paychecks at risk. And I realize that there's a little bit of FUD there, and I don't want to get into that territory.
Well, you have to a little bit, because I do think that clients don't see what we see, right? And if you're going to say like, hey, this security is going to save you problems down the road, you're gunning on the idea that something could happen to them. Now, granted,
Right.
a lot of us who are listening, especially listeners, would say, well, if it could happen, it would happen. Everyone's website gets hacked, everybody's email gets phished, or whatever it is. Obviously it will happen, but it's hard for someone to see that in advance. I remember having conversations with clients in the past, being like, we're going to add like a third party anti-spam filter. And they're like, well, our spam's not out of control. And I'm like, it will get out of control in time. We're going to nip it now. But when when the client is not in IT or in technology, just generally, it is typically harder for them to see the future of what's coming down the path. Our job as IT professionals is to do that. And no, it's not AI. However, AI is making phishing attempts better. Like the bad side is using AI to create more susceptible phishing. And now, my clients that have my advanced anti-spam are like, hey, I read this article. And I'd be like, you're already protected, dude. Boom, mic drop, walk away, because, you believed me in what I said. But it is hard for them to see this. So sometimes you do need a little bit of, as you said, FUD to like explain it to them. A lot of us also say like, oh, you're buying insurance. I don't really like the insurance play, because I think like it's too one, it can be too close to home for someone who needed insurance, or two, it doesn't play in the long run, because like people wouldn't buy insurance if it wasn't legally obligated.
I don't know that is particularly true, but we can have that conversation some other day. There's a lot to this, and we're not going to tell you that our way is the right way. We're just going to tell you
Yes,
that.
Yes,
No,
we are.
okay,
Our
you
way-
can. I'm not.
Fine.
But so I do want to make a comment, because this just happened to me today. You talked about AI creating emails for the bad actors. I actually think we have gotten to the point now where the emails from the bad actors look more legit than emails that are actually coming from a human being.
They tip the scales the other way, so now it's fake, because like your English
It's too good.
is too good. Dear sir / madam, 'twas a great evening, was it not, at the PAX 8 event upon Denver, Colorado? Dude, you don't talk that way. This is obviously not you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm gonna have ChatGPT for the rest of the day. I'm gonna type any email I need to send to a customer. I'm gonna have ChatGPT redo it as medieval English, and just see if my clients either A, notice, or B, think it's phishing. That'd be an amazing phishing test.
That will be.
We should talk about phishing testing on another show. It's one of those days. Stay away from cheap clients unless they're doing good for the earth, or you believe in them wholeheartedly. I have a lot of nonprofits, and not all of them are cheap. There are some that are very much not, and they understand putting money into technology is a good thing, and it helps their productivity, which is where you want to be. There are nonprofits that are cheap, and they're also a good thing, because they know where to put their money when they need to. I will not work with a customer who's like, I need 20 email addresses and I want them for $2.99. Not my style. Not my ICP. If you don't know what an ICP is, go back, insert a random number of episodes here that we've talked about
4,
it.
5.
Yeah, last time? I don't know. Anything else you want to say about cheapos?
Just that cheap is relative for everybody, right? And I think the one thing that I thought about earlier when it comes to this is, are you an MSP that's delivering commoditized IT services where, yes, price is pretty much all that matters, right? Price and uptime. Or are you an MSP that's actually delivering business solutions to your clients? And I think on the commodity side, those are the players in the cheap space. But if you're trying to evolve as an MSP into more of a business partner, you need to make sure that you are not accumulating clients that are just there for the cheapest IT support.
Agreed. 100% this time.
Good. That's better than 99.8.
99.98%. I have a tattooed on my arm. I don't, but it'd be funny if I did. Well, that's it for us here today. Check us out at facebook.com/group/all things MSP. Watch all of our facial expressions at youtube.com/all things MSP. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. You're already on the podcast, but subscribe on another podcast and throw the numbers off and really piss Eric off with that because those systems never work right. But that's about it. That's Eric. I'm Justin. Bye.
Thank you for listening or watching the All Things MSP podcast. If you liked this episode, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, hit that like button, and consider subscribing to catch all our weekly episodes. And from your host extraordinaire, Justin Escar, and myself, Eric Anthony, your humble producer and All Things MSP founder, thank you very much for spending your time with us. If you are not aware, All Things MSP started as a Facebook group and now supports over 6,000 members. We also have a LinkedIn page for those of you who don't do Facebook, and make sure to check out our YouTube channel for even more content. A special thank you to our elite sponsor, CoreView, helping you manage your Microsoft 365 tenants instead of them managing you. And a big thank you to our premier sponsors, EasyDmark, Helped, GoesInta, MoveBot, and Nodeware. And thank you to the rest of our sponsors. Without sponsors, we could not do what we do for the MSP community. Please consider checking them out. The All Things MSP podcast is a BizPow LLC production. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect the thoughts and opinions of any employer, vendor, sponsor, or random taxi driver in the Metro DC area. Be sure to join us next week for another exciting episode.